Líderes del Futuro, part of what we do is we always bring either individuals who speak about mental health or we promote events that have to do with mental health. And what I want to talk about today is the 25 common behaviors of someone who has experienced childhood emotional abuse. I understand fully that some of this is triggering, but we need to really get to the point that we talk about our trauma. Almost every week for the last couple of months, I've had at least one individual that I worked with in the past who has reached out because they are about to reach out the end of that um, life cycle. They have determined that they have nothing to contribute or that it is not worth continuing the process. Just last night, I had a long conversation with an individual. The day before, I had somebody else. And again, what I want to talk about is how, as children, especially in the Latinx community, which is my specialty as far as research and education and personal experience, of course, in the Latinx community, many of us grew up in emotional pain, physical pain. Trauma was a daily thing. Or parents would call us names, or parents would beat us up. And as a result of that, we learn to avoid as much trauma as possible as a survival skill. The problem is that when you grow up and you have all that trauma, trying to keep a job, trying to get through the day, can be almost impossible, especially when you are an immigrant who is undocumented, perhaps, or an immigrant in general who has left their grandparents and other people behind. And then you have to deal with floods and you have to deal with fires, and now you have to deal with a pandemic. And so here are some of the 25 common behaviors of somebody who has experienced childhood emotional abuse. And among this include asking questions even when the answer is always obvious. Seeking of approval from individuals is something that victims of emotional abuse, it's one of the symptoms that we can always tell. We know the answer, but we still ask for somebody to remind us that we know the answer because that's the level of approval that we are used to as children. Because that way, we didn't get beat up or called names or sent out or not fed or whatever the situation was. The other one is apologizing all the time, even for things that don't require an apology. Again, it's a defense mechanism, it's a survival technique to avoid further conflict. You're walking, you're saying goodbye to somebody, you're walking backwards, or somebody's coming by walking backwards, doesn't see you, they bump into you. Technically, cultural protocol says they apologize to you, but you end up apologizing as if it was your fault. So that again, if you can avoid more trauma, then everybody will go home happy. Second guessing yourself about everything, right? What would my mom say? What should I do? This and that. And it just keeps repeating all the time. And that one is very similar with having a hard time making decisions. I work next month, it'll be 25 years. I work 25 years now with gang affiliated youth, youth who have been the victims of trauma, undocumented youth and their families. And often in my work, I take children to eat at restaurants, public spaces where we can share a meal and talk. And it'll be the same behavior every time to this day. Would you like Mexican food? Would you like a burger? Would you like pizza? What do you like? Oh, I don't know. Okay, let's cut it down. Mexican food or maybe pizza. Or, whatever you want. It's okay. Okay. And it becomes such an issue that if I don't decide, they will cancel the meeting. And the meeting is about teaching them how to heal from their traumas. So I cannot afford to cancel. But this happens all the time. The other one, and a very common one, especially in the Latinx community, but I also see it in people coming out of prison, is that mask that we put in the morning and we look tough, like don't mess with me. But inside, we are suffering in silence. Inside, we are very sensitive. But we have been told that you don't speak of your feelings because people will see you as weak and they will take advantage of you. In many other situations, just like as a way of avoiding conflict, perfectionistic behavior, right? These are the people that have everything in little piles and everything lined up and everything, the line is correct. Because again, growing up, they were told that they were not good enough. And so if they are perfect, hopefully they can avoid conflict, but maybe get some praise. One that I put to the test often in my classes when I teach in person is I will ask a student at the back of the class to clap loudly when I give the signal in the middle of class when nobody is expecting it. And you can always tell who tenses up, who's getting ready to run out of the classroom or fight for that matter, right? Sensitive to loud noises. Sometimes you're at a restaurant or somewhere else and a car backfires and suddenly you can see some of the people in the room like freak out. Other people, nothing. It's just the sound of a vehicle. Many individuals, especially in the Latinx community, that come across as introverts, they are not introverts. Very common to sit down for dinner and you have adults having a conversation and they're talking about maybe another family member or somebody else. And then a child wants to participate, wants to contribute, and they are told, this is a conversation for adults, stay quiet and eat your meal. The idea here in the United States of the child should be seen but not heard is the same idea that applies here. And children are told that what they have to contribute and their voice doesn't matter. And as a result of that, they learn to be quiet and quiet. And teachers in elementary school later on don't understand why this kid doesn't participate. And in middle school gets worse. And then parents even say, why is it that my kid never wants to talk to me? Well, because you told that child too many times that they were not good enough, that their voice had no value. So we come across as introverts, but we are not. Yes, there are true introverts, but many individuals that come across as introverts are not. They have just been traumatized far too many times and told that they didn't belong. And another very common, especially among men of the Latinx community, it happens with females a lot, but men have it worse. And this is attachment issues. They see somebody at a dance, they see somebody at a quinceañera, they see somebody at a wedding, and they are ready to get married to that person. They are getting ready to have children with that person. They are getting ready to everything. And unfortunately, technology doesn't help them. Apps that allow you to swipe left or right or message somebody quickly and leads to a meeting that often leads to sex rather than getting to know somebody is very unhealthy because we are afraid to be alone because we don't know how to love ourselves. And I bring all of this and a couple more here in a minute because as a result of the traumas that we are all going through with COVID and again, floods and fires and drought that we have now here, people are being triggered so many times that we are seeing more violence as far as domestic violence, childhood abuse. We are seeing more DUIs. We are seeing more drive-by shootings. We're seeing all of this stuff. And people are asking, what is causing it? Well, trauma. Trauma is what causes it. People don't know how to address, even accept the fact that they have been victims of trauma and that we are survivors. Not victims, but survivors. There's a big difference. A victim is somebody that stays in that stage of being a victim and continues to live that way the rest of their lives. A survivor is somebody who acknowledges that they were the victim of trauma. And the way we deal with this is instead of running away from conflict, which is one of the biggest symptoms of someone who has been the victim of emotional abuse is we sit down on a piece of paper or multiple pieces of paper and we just make a list of all of our traumas. And we leave space to continue to write them down. And we always keep around the 1-800-273-8255 number. Remember, I always say, put it on a big piece of paper, bold letters and numbers. This is the suicide prevention hotline, and post it in the front door of the fridge. Post it at the entrance of your kids' room. Text it to the children, text it to family members, text it to friends, and say, because I love you, another concept that appears to be alien to the Latinx community. Yesterday, I was having a conversation via Zoom with a kid, and his dad called him. And I said, why didn't you say, I love you to your father? Oh, we don't do that, right? Or fear to express our feelings because we will be seen as weak. For someone who has lost a family member, and many kids, 2006, I lost 4 kids due to gang violence, 2 from Santa Rosa, 1 from Sonoma, and 1 from Hillsburg. The level of trauma. I tell every one of my kids that I love them every time. And I respect that. It may make them feel uncomfortable at first. And I make it clear. Just like I make it clear, you do not have to ever say it back to me. I just want you to understand that my love for you is unconditional. A subject that, again, they are not familiar with. But we have to have that conversation. 1-800-273-8255, the suicide prevention hotline. And so what we do is we make a list of all of our traumas, and we cry if needed, that's okay. And then we go to therapy with the intention of working on those. And I have my TikTok, it's called @líderes_del_futuro with double O at the end. And I put a new video almost every day, 50 seconds, 52 seconds. And today's was about learning to live, not survive, but live. And by that, I don't mean go buy a new car to make yourself feel better, go on an expensive vacation to make yourself feel better, go buying new clothes to make yourself feel better. But the first breath that you take each morning should be savored, as a piece of cake almost. It's a celebration that we made it through another night, and we have the opportunity to heal, and we have the opportunity to succeed. And just as important, we have the opportunity to be of service to somebody else. So you make your list and you go to therapy, or you start doing your own work. And over time, what you want to do, this is what people asked me the other day, why do you want us to make a list? Because I said it on TikTok. And I said, because you want over time to be able to come over and cross that one out and say, I have healed from that one. I can tell the story of how my father used to hit me, but it doesn't hurt me anymore. I am no longer a victim. I am a survivor, and I can tell you my story without having to relieve the pain. And telling that story may save somebody else's life because they may be suicidal. That's why we do it. And then in the other piece of paper, we write down some of the traumas that we know we cause on purpose, consciously, to other people. And we want to get to the point that we forgive the people that caused us trauma, as the one and only queen of salsa, Celia Cruz, says, I forgive, but I do not forget. We do not want you to forget the trauma, because you may fall victim all over again. But we want you to forgive, because as Robert Blythe said, when a child is born, the child jumps around and has no limits. But ask a 19-year-old, ask a 20-year-old, and they move slow because they now have a bag full of trauma that they are dragging behind them. And so being able to heal from trauma means that you can go back and be lighter and walk and run and not have so much stuff in that bag. In the same way, we need to learn to forgive ourselves. Forgive ourselves for the traumas that we intentionally have caused other people. And it's not as simple as, I wish it didn't happen, but maybe we reach back to that person and say, I want to personally apologize to you. I now realize I did this, and I hope you can forgive me. But you do your own work to forgive yourself, even if they will not forgive you. And that means to live today while planning for the future and doing the work for the community. 1-800-273-8255 is the suicide prevention hotline. We had COVID, we have fires. We are now in the fire season in Northern California and Southern California, in Arizona and other places. Trauma will always exist, but it's about not allowing it to pile up to the point that one day you pick up one bottle of beer and it becomes you getting arrested because you kind of lost control and ended up with a DUI. Or you get in an argument and you commit domestic violence or child abuse because you beat your child or your partner, right? Healing means that you learn to love yourself and you can tell a mile away who is unhealthy and should not be your partner. That's what healing is all about. So I invite you to do your work. If you're in Sonoma County and require assistance with therapy, there's many places. But if you want therapy that focuses on the Latinx community, Humanidad Therapy and Educational Services is one place. And if you would like to purchase my diaries that I wrote, you can go to my website, lideresdelfuturo.org, lideresdelfuturo.org, to get those. And again, healing is possible. Trauma will always exist. Let's empty some of that baggage so that we can move forward.